kind of a schedule I'm going to try to keep to. So and just let you know kind of what I'm going to be going through and how this video is going to break down and work. And today we're actually going over the Sony KV 13M10. And what we're going to do is we're going to look at how to RGB modify this set. So what I've got for you is I've actually got the set here that I've modified with this RGB. We'll go through that and then I'll get into that a little bit more, but just want to get a quick confirmation. So if anybody's in the stream and wants to leave a message, let me know they can hear me verbally or my audio is fine. I'd appreciate it just so we can make sure that things are going good. All right. So I do think I have some confirmation things are good. So hey, good to see you again, Belmont, and everybody else in the chat. And so just a note that I do have an upcoming live show. So if you have not been able to catch one because of the timing, we're actually doing another one on the 31st, which is tomorrow. And let's see if we can get anything saying the bit rate's coming back a bit, but we'll have to just... It says everything's fine on my end, so hopefully it'll catch up and the stream will catch up a bit, but that's okay if it doesn't. Sorry to hear all that. So hopefully that stuff will straighten out on the buffering, and I just freezing every couple seconds. All right, so maybe just like hit refresh on there and hopefully it'll come back. But if it doesn't, then we'll see how the actual playback comes, and hopefully it'll clear up itself as we go here and the video won't be too bad. But anyway, there's another live show coming tomorrow night where I have a special guest. Our friend 8-Bit Esquire will be back and we'll be discussing the Neo Geo AES. And I've also got some new AV gear that I'll be unboxing there on the show with him. And so once that'll be tomorrow night at 9 p.m. Eastern time is about the start time of that stream. It'll be here on the channel, Retro Tech. So if you want to come hang out for that one, if you're catching this one on a playback and you want to come to that live show, look for that alert to come out tomorrow evening. Again, 3:31 at 9 p.m. Eastern time. Some of the AV gear I have coming in is a bunch of these analog video generators and then a waveform monitor. And this analog video, so I'm really excited to get that out. I've been researching more on this thing. It looks really cool. So again, that's tomorrow night. But again, for today's show, we're going to look at this Sony KV M10, and it's a 13-inch model. So I'm going to switch over here to a different camera view. I'll be switching through some different camera views, but this is the actual CRT itself. And again, it's a 13-inch diagonal screen right here, and it's a color TV. And what I'll do is, before we even look at that, we're going to look over at some specifications on this specific model. Again, the KV13M10. And so this one is an American TV, and it's according to the American TV standard. So it's an NTSC set. It does accept antenna channels in the analog form from VHF, UHF, and CATV, and there's ranges there that are pretty normal. And it has an antenna input in the back, and then there's a Trinitron picture tube, obviously. Now the power requirements are 120 volts, 60 hertz, and then there is a Canadian version, but we're specifically talking about the M10 from the American US version. The only other thing on here that's really of any input is there's one video input on the set that's in the back, and it has a mono audio input with that. And there's a 1 watt speaker inside here. So nothing great for sound. And it uses 75 watts when it's in use, 4 watts in standby mode. And that's pretty much it. There's a 20-inch version of this. So if you run across one of these and it's a 20-inch one, this whole guide will work for that. There's some other things on here that will work for that. Now, before I get into the guide, I actually want to show you the set that I have modified here. And we're going to let it power on for a second. I'll switch over to the main camera, and the set's coming on. You can see right there, video. And so right now, the video or the CRT is just in its standard mode. So when I bought this CRT, this is how it would have come. It would just have video, and then it has basically RF, or 75 ohm antenna analog video input back there. Hey, Tony, thanks for the super chat, and appreciate that. So I'm going to first show you just how this thing works a little bit as it sits, like what the inputs are and what it looks like. Because again, it just has a single input on the back for composite video, and then that antenna input. Now those inputs still do work. This set again is one that I followed a modification guide, which we'll go through after we look at this set in action, because I wanted to show it to you first and let you see what it looks like modified. But the great thing about this Sony modification on this set is that it doesn't interfere with anything. It doesn't actually cause any of the other inputs to stop working. So there's really not much of a downside to modification on this particular set. And there's quite a long list of these Sonys that you can do from this era that are great great candidates for an RGB modification. And so the reason I chose this M10, right? Why did I choose this one? Now this one is, there's a couple reasons. First, I was able to get this one pretty cheap. I did buy it, and it came with this remote control, which is the standard remote control for it. And I paid $75 for it. And it was in a store in Texas when I was down there last May. I bought it. The store had this one and a couple other CRTs. I bought this one in a prison CRT, which I haven't covered too much yet, but I will in the future. $75 for it. So you should be able to find something similar to this for like $75. That's pretty cheap. I know that some people can find it for less than that. Maybe you can find one for free, or maybe you end up having to pay a little bit more than that. It's okay. As long as it's working and it's good and you get to see it. I'm comfortable with paying $75 to $100 for something like this. So that's one of the reasons. The other reason is that it actually has a chip that can be modified. Believe it or not, there are other 13-inch CRTs that are Trinitrons that look a lot like this, only they're in like white shells or other different shells. And those ones actually can't be modified for RGB. They have different chips, different build outs, different video chips that won't let you piggyback off of that to inject RGB through the OSD and the mod that we're actually doing on this set, where this set has a good video chip that you can do all this with. So that was one of the other reasons it was a compatible mod. The other thing is there's a lot of documentation on this one. There's a great guide that we're going to go through here that's on Andy King's website, which is the CRT database, and it's wonderful. So that's another big plus, and something I recommend to anybody who's trying to do this. Don't try to figure everything out on your own. If there's already a guide for a CRT, or if you want to RGB mod a CRT on your own, try to find something that there is a guide out there for, and some documentation on, and some good pictures so that you can follow that guide and be able to do this on your own. And hopefully if you come across one of these M series, then you can use this video along with the guide that I'm going to show you to help you get this CRT modded. Now, as I said, right now it's in its standard video mode, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on a video signal into it, and we're going to see it on the screen. Okay, so there's our warm-up screen. This is the N64 EverDrive cartridge, which is going through, and it's actually just going through the composite video input on the back of the set. And I'll show you the back of the set later on, because I'll also show you the input that I added for RGB. But right now you can see that it is in that mode for video and composite video. And then if I just hit start and load a game on here, it should load up Revenge. So I hope that it doesn't go and get too pixelated or too like crazy on the screen as far as flashing. Just give it a second and it'll probably update fine once it gets past something. Maybe I'll back the setup a little bit, but hopefully it'll focus in there. So this is just to demonstrate that you can use it in composite video mode even after you do this modification, because that's what it's in. It's just in regular composite video mode. And now I'm going to switch it over pretty quickly to RF, because I can change this from RF to composite video while it's in the normal TV mode. And I've actually got a composite, or I'm sorry, I've got the RF adapter for the N64 right down here. So I'm going to go ahead and switch that. And then we will turn it over to channel, and hopefully well, unfortunately, my RF just doesn't seem to be working. It was working in my testing. Let me see if I can get it to go. Okay, there we go. So just as you can see, this is the RF signal on this set, and it's going to go past the little flashy things real quickly here. You'll see all that again. I'm sorry. But once it goes past that and it goes into the normal screen, we'll try to skip past some of that so it goes to the normal load up screen. You can see where we do have some RF interference. It even shows up here, the snow effect on our tube, and we have a lower resolution picture. But you can see right here that this modified set, it still works in that RF mode. So you can use it for the standard things that it does. The only thing you do is you also get the clarity and benefit of RGB, which I'm going to switch to next. I just wanted to, again, show you that these things are possible. So when I switch it into RGB mode, the first thing I need to do is turn it back into that video input. And the reason on there being is that video input is the way you're going to connect your sync line. It's coming in through the same composite video line that the video is using. That's where you're sending your sync. You're just setting in a separate signal for your R, G, and B colors. And we'll go through that modification in a second. But first, I want to show you how this one works and functions. We have it over here in our video mode. Now there's a switch here that's installed that comes with this mod kit. It's right under this flap on this particular CRT model. And all I do is I come in here and I flip that switch over, and it will still say the video up top. It will still say that. And then I can click on another console, which this is a Sega Genesis, and it has an RGB modification done to it. It's got the triple bypass, and it's coming in straight from that output on there through a SCART cable into just the back where I have a SCART input installed in the back of this CRT. So that's all how that works. And if I load up this should be, yes, the 240p test suite. And we'll get this loaded up. We'll pull up a test bar here. That's not going to be too hard to see. Kind of get it toned down a little bit. And hopefully, I'm sure the dog is back there messing with something. I just noticed him on camera. Anyway, we're so here's just the RGB in this. Now you will see, you know, that this screen does not look perfect. And the thing about this M10 series, it is very basic. It doesn't even have a great set of menu options. They're actually better ones. I've highlighted a better monitor before, CRT, sorry, this is a television. But I highlighted another 13 KV, and it was a KV13 TR28. And if you want to go back and watch that video, I'll have that. You could just search my channel and find that one. But that that monitor has a couple more options in the menus to adjust the settings. This one's very limited on what you can adjust for geometry. And we'll look at that after we kind of look through the modification in a second. So I just wanted to show you this first, though. This one has been kind of adjusted, and it works fantastic. It has a really sharp, nice picture, especially compared to just composite video and RF. I mean, composite video on this set is a lot clearer than the RF. And then when you step up to RGB, you're really starting to see scan lines and definition on this set that you normally wouldn't see with the original hardware. So this is, again, just a demo of how this works. Now, as you can see on the screen, if I need to adjust this set, I can still do it with the remote and using the service menu, which is something that you couldn't do if you did the prior mods that I've shown off on my channel. And those are RGB mods from like 3 or 4, maybe even 5 years ago that I did on other sets. And those did not involve the Mux mod, which is actually a much better mod because you can then see what you're actually adjusting. on the screen. Before, you couldn't actually look at the OSD while you had it in RGB mode. Now you're able to do that, and there's not really, again, any downside to this modification. All right, so now we'll take a quick second to jump over here back to the other screen, and I'm going to get into some other documentation here that I have available. And the first one is what I had briefly mentioned a second ago, and that is the CRT database from Andy King. And this is a place where, there's a lot of great information on CRTs as far as RGB mods and other documentation as far as repairs and different things that Andy's done on his side of the CRT repair. So I highly recommend checking this site out and using it as a great source of resource or tool for you to find any kind of documentation. Because, for example, he has the manuals hyperlinked here if you want a user manual, or the service manual, which we saw the end of the user manual a second ago when we were looking at the specifications for this CRT. So that's a great thing, and there are notes on this particular set. And again, we're looking at the RGB modification, which will be noted down here. We're going to go through that in a little bit more detail here. And just so you know, this is a very similar to the set that I covered prior on my last video, and that will be linked in the show description after the replay is uploaded of the live stream here. And so this one's pretty much similar to that. I don't think the modification is going to be any different between the two sets. And it just, again, like I told you, has fewer features and fewer adjustable options. And so the process here is, again, tying into, we have a nice picture of our chassis here. This is the chip that we're kind of breaking into and getting our modification going from and into to get RGB. That's the chip right here that my cursor's hovering over. And we're going to just go through this guide that was written up by Six Tanks / Matt Ross. So thank you very much, Matt, for putting together this guide for everybody. It says, like the previous BA1 models, BA2 chassis Trinitrons have a secondary set of RGB input pins on the jungle chip. These can be used to add RGB capability without affecting the OSD. The TV pictured is a guide for the 13M10. It should also apply to the 20-inch BA2 Trinitrons, the M10, and the S10. So if you have a KV2010 or a KV20S10, M10, you can definitely do this modification to that set. On these sets, the jungle chip IC301 is located on the A board near the tuner. Most of the work will be done on the section under there, under the underside of the board. So if I go stream down here a little bit more, this is the bottom side of the board where we'll be doing our modification, or where I did do my modification. Now, this is the first thing on the other side of that chip that we need to locate, and that is pins 16, 17, and 18, because that controls red, green, and blue inputs, okay? And you can see on this, they're all actually connected on a loop. So if you were to take a multimeter and put it in a continuity mode, these are all connected on a ground loop on this particular pinpoint. And then that ground loop is sent through this 10K ohm resistor, and that's where it's connected to the ground. So all these are looped together, and then it's fed in, and then it goes 10K ohm resistor to ground, okay? So to do this modification, we're going to insert our RGB signals. We have to separate the 3 pins by cutting these traces between them on the PCB. Then the 10K ohm resistor must be removed. So it's quite simple when you're actually in there doing this to remove this resistor, right? You just get it and heat it up and get it out of the way. The only tricky part is you need to get in here with a knife and carefully cut the traces between these 3 points so that they are not on a loop any longer. They need to not be on a loop. So you cut through the trace with an X-Acto knife, and then you use a multimeter and make sure that there is no longer a loop between the 3 of these colors. And again, the last thing first or last thing you do is remove that little resistor. And this is what that plan looks like. on the diagram from the actual service notes and the service manual. Okay, then each RGB line must have a 75 ohm terminating resistor to ground and a 0.1 UF inline capacitor before connecting to the chassis. Blanking should be connected to a 5-volt supply via a 1000 ohm resistor and a SPDT switch. Sync, ideally in the form of composite video or Luma, should be connected to the rear video input. Left and right audio are mixing using a 1000 ohm resistor and routed to the rear audio jack. So that's the exact terms. This is a wiring diagram if you are using a SCART connector, and it explains in those terms how this goes in and which pins on the SCART connector to connect to. And you'll get to see a real life how all this works in a second when we tear down the CRT that we've already looked at here. So again, that's just how this works. You're wiring in the SCART input, but you could also decide that it would be better for you to use RCA jacks. That's fine. You can wire those RCA AV inputs, or if you wanted to do a BNC input and put that in the back, you could do that instead of this SCART input, but you would still need to have the RGB signals go into that receptacle or input that you decide to use. You need to have it going in there with that 0.1 microfarad capacitor in line, and then you need to have 75 ohms resistor going from the that same line to ground. So that needs to be done to make this all work properly. So again, here's a great diagram for you. I know we're kind of getting into this, and it might sound a little bit technical and difficult for everybody, but we'll just try. I should promise when I open this up and show it to you, it'll make a little bit more sense. And as we go along, you'll be able to hopefully connect the dots on here. So this is a nice diagram that Matt put together where he found some great points on here that you can use on the back of this chip for ground. And then see, so you've got your cut traces that you cut, the yellow stuff that you've cut and removed, and you got your pins ready. Well, then you can go and you need to have your blue input come to this point, your green input to this point, and your red input to this point. And then here are 3 ground points you can choose from that work well for that. Now, also in this setup, you do need blanking and you need 5-volt, which here are 3 more 5 volts. And then here's another plate with 4 ground connectors. So there's all kinds of grounds you could use to connect this. And again, other 5 volts you can use to get the 5-volt power. So you don't have to actually look around on the service, notes up here from the actual service manual. Matt's been kind enough to put that guide together right there so you can see that there. So audio and sync signals, right? So here we've got RG and B. We've got that figured out. We've got blanking figured out. We've got 5-volt figured out, and we've got our grounds that we need for those lines. Well, over here is where we're going to get our sync. This is our video, and this is literally just a connection point connected to this AV input right here, which our RCA input right here, which is your standard composite video input. Okay, that's what we're piggybacking on to use this to get our sync in. That's where we use that. Here's some ground points. This is our audio point. So we'll mix together our audio, like he said, and we will attach one line here and then our audio ground here. So that goes to our other audio input here that we're using the same audio input and the same video input. We're using that video and audio 1 into our modification. All right. If we go down here, follow along a little bit more, we can see where we've got. If I look up here and just refresh my memory, we've got blanking coming in over here from the brown cable. This red one's going over here. Looks like it's to a 5-volt point. Yes, sorry about that. So we got blanking and 5 volts right here. Then we've got red, green, and blue, and then a ground. And what's the orange one up there? It's possibly a second ground. Yep, a ground and a ground. And then over here are the audio and sync connections. So you've got audio, ground, and then composite video sync right here. So that's how he wired it up. And then on the other side, he's got a quick connection point here for the connect to connect to that and then connect to the SCART input, which is going to mold onto the back shell. So this is a nice hole on the circuit board, and then use a little glue to hold it. The 1000 ohm resistor is attached down here to one leg of this switch, which you've seen now on my set is right here on the front down here. This switch, this is the switch that switched it from RGB to regular mode, and that's how it works. So that's the switch that is on your screen now, and you can see that resistor on that leg, which is the red line, which is the 5-volt line, and then the other line is the blanking line, and it does not have the resistor on it, but it's fed to the center portion of the switch, and that's how you wire up that switch. And then here's what the SCART input would look like if you wired it up. And I know this is probably the most insane and probably confusing part to most people when they see is this, but you just have to follow the directions on and learn how to read this, and it tells you exactly what to do, so you end up here. But for the most part, if we look at this picture closely, we can see like the blue here and the green, and then the red is probably right here, I think, and or maybe the red's the yellow actually cable on this pinout. But you can see that little component right there. That is the 1.1 microfarad capacitor that you put. So you take your line, you strip your cable that comes from, say, your green and your blue and your red, and you tack in that or tin up the end of that wire, and you attach that capacitor, and then you can attach that capacitor to the input that is, for example, blue or green on the SCART input or whatever input you're using, and then you take and you tie a 75 ohm resistor from that same point and tie that to the ground. And this is all in a ground loop together. So all these grounds are put together on a SCART input. If you just have a single line, you're going to have a ground to each. If you have your own inputs that you're using, if you're not using SCART. So yeah, there's a good picture of that. And then if you look down here, this is how they were talking about having resistors on each audio. So you're tying your audio in together into a single line where your left and right audio will come together, because this set, it only has a mono speaker. So you don't want to lose the 2-channel audio, but you want to have that fed in to the system so you have both those sounds on your set. Now, here is an example of the positioning for a SCART input. You could see right here next to the label is the alternative SCART location. Unfortunately, pretty much you have to cut a hole in this plastic to put a SCART input in. I put one right here in the same spot that they did, but I did not use bolts to put mine in. I used a smaller formatting one, and then I epoxied it into place. And we'll look at that closer in a second. And then here's some results of how clear the tube looks and everything. And this is a before picture, before the modification. And then there's some after shots of the set. And so that's the whole, how this CRT works, how this modification works. So once you get all these parts together and you can do this modification according to this guide. Now that's another plus, is this modification, the actual parts for this are pretty much very cheap. Okay, so you're going to have to buy a SCART input or whatever type of input you want to input your video signal from your consoles to this television. You're going to need that, and then you're going to need some wiring, and you'll have to be pretty familiar with how to solder and how to build things. But the components are just those small capacitors, small resistors. Those are common parts and all very cheap. You can definitely get this done for less than, if you're doing it on your own, less than $15 or $20, even if you're having to buy these from multiple places where you have to pay shipping. But you could go to Mouser and get everything probably besides the SCART input from there You just have to go somewhere else to get the SCART input. I'm not really sure about that one. Okay. So do we have, we can take a second here and see if there's any kind of questions. I'll just take a second to catch my breath. I've gone through and I see that the chat's been just kind of enjoying things and talking about some of the stuff that is important there, and definitely want to be safe when you're doing this modification. The good thing is you don't have to have the CRT turned on when you're doing this modification. You do this with it all turned off, and you'll want to discharge the set, because this one is a consumer set, so you definitely want to be careful and proceed with any kind of caution if you're going to do this. If you don't know what you're doing, then maybe refer this job to somebody who does work on this stuff and knows a little bit more about how to work on these machines. But see, the next thing we're going to get ready to do is I'm going to switch over to an overhead camera, and we're going to start to take this set and disassemble it. That way I can look at the modification that I've done, and we'll try to get some pictures of it, and I'll show you as best I can how it looks in comparison to the notes we just went through on the CRT database. And maybe this would help, you know, if you're really interested in trying these kind of modifications, this will help you. So again, we do need to make sure we're going to be safe. So I do have some tools here, and I need to get some things kind of moved around for a second, just so we can get a chance to actually move the CRT up on the workbench here, because that's what we're about to do. And what I'm going to do first is turn the power off on it, and we'll return it to the standard video mode on there. Now, there is an audio jack on here, down here in the front of this set. So if you wanted to go maybe even beyond something and not actually put the RGB, you know, modification in the back through a SCART, if you're really creative, you may be able to even do this with like a TRSS or some kind of input jack on there that you could then output, you know, another cable adapter where you could have 3 cables going in, one for red, green, and blue, and then have that go into the chip, and then you would just remove that old connection that had an audio input. That's another great idea. And hey, Delusional, good to see you. And so that's another idea to go along with this set modification. Now, when I take this apart, you're going to realize, if you've seen anything that I've done so far before, or if you've seen work from what I've worked on before, you're going to notice there's a lot less hardware inside of this set than there is inside of the normal PVM. So basically the next step here is just going to be for me to kind of take this thing apart. Now, before that, I will take a chance to show you what the input board looks like on the back of this. So it's a little dark there, and hopefully it'll come back into view, and we'll get a better view of this when it's you know, put back together, or when I get it up here on the bench. But if you look at it from there, you can just tell I have a SCART cable up top, and then down below I've got my audio and my video coming in for composite, and then above that right here is the RF. So the good thing is like I say, you can get a set like this. If it's modified, look how many inputs you could have. You could have a RGB switch going into that RGB input, and it would be just as good as anything on the sides of like a PVM, as far as like getting you RGB on the CRT in 240p or 480i. And the only thing you're missing out on is S-Video, which is kind of tragic, but still at the same time, it's better. There's plenty of S-Video options out there. And if you find a set that's higher end than this M10, it could have S-Video, and then you have S-Video on board, which I did on a 27-inch CRT a few years ago. So again, that's what the input board, we're about to look at that closer, but I just wanted to show you that. All right, so we remove that set. Let's change over to a different, more appropriate camera angle. There we go. Okay, so just a quick look at this remote. Again, you can't get into a service menu. It's very limited. I'll pull that up later and show off a bit of that. But we can get a good clear look at our input board back here. So you'll be able to see how this looks a little bit better. If I just lean this, make sure I don't have anything on the glass, and you get a good clean look at what the RGB, let me swing that around and look at it like this way, maybe. Let's see if we can get this up there. There we go. So the first off, that is our SCART input. And this this plastic is very, very soft. So it does not take a lot to get that spot cut out. The problem is the plastic is so soft on the shell, a lot of times it will splinter. And I'm not going to say that this is like the prettiest modification I've ever done. I'll be honest with you. It is absolutely one that I was doing more as an experiment to see how it would go, because it had been so long since I made one of these, and I've never done one that was able to use the OSD. So that's the SCART input and how it looks on our finished set. If I try to lean this a little bit farther forward, you'll just be able to see the normal inputs on here. Right down there, our audio and video and our antenna input. So that's what we're looking at. Now, the way to get this set taken apart is pretty simple. You've got a screw that needs to come out right here. And then there's one on the opposite side there. And then if we look up top, we have another one here that's got to come out. And there's nothing else. I think it's just those four. So we will go ahead now and I will remove these screws. And, well, if I can get the right size screwdriver down in there, and hopefully try to actually use the camera because I can't see it directly. So we've got one screw in each corner, and there is probably, no, there's not a screw back here towards the input board, so it should just be these four corner screws. So that one looks like it's good and gone out. And we'll slide this around, and we'll take out the other screws. And there's that input board, but I'll get these other screws on each side out, and then we will take a look inside the CRT, and we will be able to look into it. And that is the good thing about these CRTs, is there's not genuinely, I mean, it's the smaller ones especially. Once you get into larger ones, they do have a lot more screws, and you need to be careful because you don't want to actually damage something by forgetting to remove a screw, you know, pulling the shell off thinking you've got all the screws and then one of them still remains. You can really damage something that way. But the service manual will generally tell you how many screws are in there and how to remove the shell safely. So that's another good reason to check out the website, like the CRT database or any of the wikis that will have, you know, like the CRT wiki that will have information linked to how to get these things apart. And that way you don't have to worry about breaking anything. If they're about any trouble. Ooh, looks like we got that one loose. Try to lift this guy up. And back. And there we go. And the screws are falling out. Let's make sure that we get them all out. Shake a little bit. Put them in a bag here. And let's see if you can see me here. See, I'm switch the camera around just for a second so that you don't have to look at just the top. We'll get it resituated with something a little bit more fashionable here in a second, but this way you'll be able to see as I pull this backwards kind of what that all looks like. And there's the 4 screws. And so if we look here on our screen a little bit to the center here, this is the mono audio speaker I was telling you about. Not that great, but at least it's got something. Just slide this back a little bit because again, I don't have that connection. I'm not able to actually rip my SCART input. It's on like a cable where it's not actually unattached from the chassis. Right? I didn't have a disconnect here in the shop. Again, this was like a more of a prototype for me than an actual device I was trying to either offer for sale or something. More of just a personal curiosity. So let's see how this looks now. If we look down our overhead camera, we can definitely see my messy mod here. And if we look here first, check this out. Let's try this spot. Look at that. Yeah, so I would do always clean stuff. Look, this is a good example of what I meant when I said I was just doing this as like a project. So I had this left over from another RGB modification kit that I never used. And a lot of this stuff is just random parts I had left over. You could see that's why each one of these capacitors looks different. You got a big yellow one, a big green one, and a very small normal one. So it's definitely like a prototype. So there's your inputs. That's what that thing looks like when it's coming from that board. Here's that wire. Everything's wired into the SCART input, just like we saw in the documentation there from the website. So that's what that looks like: red, green, and blue. And then I've actually got my stuff covered a little bit more with some shrink wrap tubing, but that then goes around here to the bottom side of the chassis. And we just saw this CRT turned on, and so we're live, right? Let's see how this discharge will look, right? Let's see. Let's have some fun. So I'm going to go ahead and get my discharge tool ready. And it's probably not going to have anything happen when I do it. But you're right, Delusional. We should just go ahead and do it just because we're live here today. And we don't want to be the ones to actually have something happen. So I don't actually have anything great to connect to on this chassis. Usually you have something good to connect to for a ground point. There is some metal shielding on the tube inside of here, but honestly, none of this is that great. I don't really like it. So I'm going to actually connect it to like my earth ground, which is wired up for my repair bench here. So I'll be able to just connect that, via this connection. I know it sounds crazy, but this goes into a strong earth ground. And when I actually do have some repairs to do on a circuit board, I don't damage the circuit board and cause a short or something. I'm always grounded. So this actually goes into a rod into the ground outside attached to the house where the main ground goes. So we'll connect to the main ground if we can get our little alligator clip to do that. And pull that out a little bit, give it something to connect to. Okay. So we'll go ahead now and discharge this. Now, again, I don't anticipate anything to happen here, but you never know. You never know. So we're going to go slip under this. Oh, I want to make sure it's on screen here. So let me change our view a little bit. And hopefully, yes, that's better. Let me come back just a little bit. Come back in screen just a little bit. And then we're going to slip this under this, and I'm going to try to, I don't know if I can actually show it to you, but do you see Oh, it's going to be difficult for me to show you without, I'm sure everybody's scared on the stream right now. So do you see the metal bit? It's really hard. It's like a 1/4 inch under my thumb. I'm sure you can see it now. That's what I'm going to tap, and we'll see if there's any jolt. And that's where the electricity is stored. So no, nothing. No jolts. Thank you very much. So that doesn't happen very often where you actually get a zap. But just like that, it's always better to be safe than sorry. And you want to remember that even if something does have electricity, or you've already discharged it properly, there's always a chance like a tube could re-energize. So after, go back and discharge that cap again, the anode cap, like that, and do the same thing with your tube at the anode point. You can always come in here and do this. Make sure there's no current stored up in that tube. Come back later and do that if you wanted. And that's it. Now it's safe to pull the chassis a little bit out. And we'll go ahead and do that. And take a quick look at this circuit board now. Again, I don't know how good this is going to look. Goodness gracious, I'm kind of nervous to show my mod work here. That's, again, on a mostly experimental phase. Just kidding. So I'm going to slip this chassis up a little bit. Hopefully I won't catch the cable on anything. And then I'm going to try to hand my camera around a little bit. Let's see how far I can get this out without actually doing any harm. Do no harm. So I think that probably right there might be the best thing I can do. And again, I don't want to accidentally hit something and knock it out. So these are the lines that are going from my SCART input. Like I showed you in the diagram earlier, I connected points over here for a ground, and then the audio, and then our sync. So that's the sync, audio, and ground. And down here is the modification point where I had to add the RGB, the ground points, 5 volts, and blanking right there. And that's pretty much all there is to it. That's what this one looks like. Let's see if I can. The problem is if I move this too much, I move the blanking switch. I don't really want to pull that out, but that's down in there. And I just had to drill a hole in the front under that sheath to get that in there. But that's, want to make sure I get a good picture. That's what the modification would look like. And then I just actually have a little tape up here where I was holding all that together, kind of to make sure it didn't shift or get pinched as I was putting it back together. And that's really all there is to it. This mod is completely reversible because I did go back and actually reverse this and make sure that it was reversible. And all you have to do is just fix the tracing that you severed, and then put the 10K ohm resistor back in place, and you can put this CRT completely back to its stock mode if you really wanted to, and you decided the mod was not for you, even though I don't think that's an issue with this one. As again, this set has, you're not losing any capabilities in here, and that's really important, so you don't actually lose any of your ability to display stuff. You're actually adding an input. So all around win. But the problem with this set is something that we talked about at the very beginning of the stream. And that is that you just don't have a lot of options. Don't have a lot of options when it comes to like adjustment on this thing. I'm having a little bit of difficulty. You got to pinch, you see this anode cap? You got to pinch these two pinchers together. You got to pinch those two points. They got to kind of like squeeze together a little bit. Squeeze them together. Sorry, I'm trying to get it on the camera. And once you squeeze them together, then they go inside the anode cap, and like they slip actually in the anode cap. So it's best to like push down against one side of the cap, and then once it's secure, you can tell because it won't easily be pulled out. Right? Won't easily be pulled out. All right. So the set itself is all put back together just so you can see some of the internal hardware. Again, this is the chip that we've been tapping into right here. We saw in the pictures earlier. It's right here where my finger is. And this is our tuner. Other stuff that's important. Let's see. There's the power cord that comes in right here. This is our tube on this model. And I wouldn't say that it's like Sony's best tube, but it's a good tube, especially if you get one that, you know, is in good shape. If you do need to make other adjustments, those are available internally, but not a whole lot. As I said before, you can add convergence strips. You can adjust convergence rings if you're extremely daring enough. But most of the time, I would leave it as it sits for those kind of adjustments. There is some adjustments on the neck board over here that you can do. Let's pull our neck board off, and I'll show you what those are. We just pull this neck board back a little bit. Hopefully you don't have to disconnect everything. And what that is focus and G2 voltage. So if you think your screen's a little blurry, then you actually have to come down here and turn this. If you think you have a blurry screen, that's the focus potentiometer. Now, good thing is you don't have to use that side. You could stick an EST screwdriver that's small in here and do it from the back side, so it's much safer to do that. But you could do that, and then the screen voltage is actually your G2 voltage. And that is something that, you know, if your tube is dying and you may need to increase that, if it gets turned down by something, you may need to increase it. But most of the time, you don't want to increase it too high because then it will, you know, actually burn your tube brighter and more voltage goes into it than intended, and that'll shorten its lifespan. So, well, that's not the right. Let's go back here. Yeah, this is the set, right? So that's what it looks like inside. We'll put it back together now, and we're going to check out some of the features of it in that service menu, because I'm interested to show you that, and I'm interested to do a future episode about the TR28 to see what kind of better features we'll have for that model as opposed to what we're dealing with on something like this. Because again, this is a great set and it's a fun project, but it is so limited on what it can actually do for adjustment that it's a bit underwhelming for that portion of the CRT. So there we go, all back together. Seem to have everything. Whoop. Good. Let's check the underside, make sure nothing's pinched. Everything looks good. This is what the bottom of the monitor looks like, or the CRT. So you can, this is like a breathe area, right? So it needs this area to circulate air and get these components cooled down on the underside there. So thankfully, these Sony sets, they're good. They're exceptional to learn on, and you know you should do all this completely responsibly, because again, you are dealing with a high voltage machine. However, these sets are plentiful. They do produce a amazing image, and you can see how just less than $20 worth of parts can turn them into an arcade level, I mean PVM level. Like if you did this on this CRT, or like one of the ones with better features, and there's no reason to be obsessed with the PVM unless you're absolutely sure that's what you want, because PVMs require PVMs require a lot of service work. And so just like anything that's higher end, there's a higher cost associated with the maintenance. And don't even get me started on the broadcast level stuff like the BVMs. I really don't think people understand just how much how finicky a lot of those machines are. Think about it. With great power comes a great pain in the neck. And that can't be truer than with a Sony BVM and some of them. They are unbelievable machines, but they are filled with hardware and constantly required servicing, even when they were new. And so now we're at the point where they're over 20 and 30 years old. And so that's what we're stuck with, is usually those require a lot of service work. And so unless you're really prepared to get into that end of the swimming pool with the CRT, it's just as fun to try to get these going too, you know? So I'm going to move this back to the bench over here where we can turn it back on, and hopefully I didn't forget to do anything. Because if I did, the stream might get extra entertaining here in a second. So, you know, maybe we'll leave this up here for a minute, just because I want to see how it looks on this camera that we're on as opposed to the other one. So we're going to go and we'll do straight RGB here. So I've got Sega Genesis here, Mega Drive Model 2, and an Insurrection Industries SCART cable. Make sure I give myself enough cord here so I don't just rip my console and drop it on the ground. And there's the SCART input, and then I just need to plug in electricity. And we'll test this out, and hopefully everything will be fine. So, thanks again, everybody who's on the stream with me. And if you've enjoyed this and you sat through to this point, please do me a favor and drop a like on the video. As I said earlier, I'm hoping that this will have some replay value to people, as far as like if you're actually trying to do this modification. I hope that they'll be able to find it, but you never know. I mean, sometimes when you do things in the live stream format, after it goes live, it's very hard for it to stay from just like disappearing into nothing. So we're going to power it on here. Sounds normal. And Belmont, I'll hook you up with some stickers. I've got to get actually another order of stickers, so we can see that our CRTs work in normal mode. Of course, I don't think our refresh rate might not cooperate. It might not. So, are we in RGB? No, I don't think so. Remember, we turned it off. There we go. Back at it. Okay, so need to get my controller and see what we can do. Yeah, I think it's going to just do a slow scroll on the screen. It's really, really hard for it to pick up a CRT live. I'm not... You know, we talked to John Linneman on the podcast about doing this properly. And I'm probably doing it the worst way possible. Exactly the opposite of what he says. So we'll go here to our test patterns, and that way we can really take a look at some of the issues that hopefully I'll be able to point out to you pretty much right away on screen. Yeah, we're going to have a slow scroll on this one. And so we'll try to move it back over to the other screen because I think it was doing better when it was over here on this bench. So let's just power it down and move it over real quick. That way nothing happens. So we'll just pick it up and put her on over. You know, I generally don't sell. Now there are some, hang on. Okay. So YouTube obviously provides a merch shop, which is some, you know, you can see it generally speaking down right below the video here where it has like the channel information and things like that. But I sometimes get some special stickers made, and most of the time I don't really offer those for sale. That's just a gift when I have those. I give them out about once or twice a year on Patreon to any Patreon member that is just on there. I give them some stickers, and those are awesome. They have some really cool sticker designs, but honestly, It's been a while since I've actually ordered any, so I need to make sure I get some new shipment in. And when I do, hey, Bob, what's up, buddy? And I will make sure to let everybody know on a Patreon message that, hey, the stickers are ready. Come get your free stickers. That's generally how I do it. All right. So hopefully our screen will cooperate and we can kind of get a good look at our downfall on this CRT. Now, the problem is I can't get like a little bit of this screen bow away no matter what I do, because again, this is going to have very lighter than usual adjustment ability. And to just go further into that, I'm going to show you a quick thing about it, and that's right over here. Again, on the, let me go down here. We're in the manual, and it's, get this sized up correctly, and I'll show you how to exactly service your set. So this is our remote that we've been talking about with this CRT, and this is the way to use the remote to actually get into a service menu. And yes, when people ask, a lot of these you do have to have a remote. Sometimes you don't. Well, let's just see what this one says. This is the only way. It says use of remote commander can be performed circuit adjustments about this model. So that's a weird sentence, right? So this is going to talk about a lot of adjustments that you can do to this set if you need to through the service menu. A lot of this stuff is stuff, you know, you're not going to need to mess with on a larger level, but on a smaller level, you can do things like we're going to with the geometry. So service mode procedure, method of setting the service adjustment mode. It needs to be in standby mode, which is powered off, plugged in, but just powered off. Okay, so we'll do that in a second. Then on our remote control, we're going to do a procedure of hitting display, then the number 5, then volume up, and then power. And it needs to all be done within a second. So it needs to go back to back to back to back. And if that's done correctly, the set will power on and we'll see this adjustment mode screen right here on the screen if we've done it correctly. Okay. The CRT displays the item being adjusted. Press 1 or 4 on the remote to select the item. So we can go press up 1, down, or 4 to select the item. And then 3 and 6 to change the data. Now this is the most important thing, guys. If you do actually get into it and do this stuff, you have to remember to do this last setting procedure, or you'll just right when you turn the set off or unplug it, it'll go back to the set it was before. So you get in here and you have to, after you make your adjustments, you have to press muting and then enter to write it into the memory. So there's actually memory in this set, and you need to press muting and then enter, and it will say service, and then it'll say write over here like it does on the screen. And then you got to press 8, then enter on the remote commander to initialize. We might not want to do that part. That might be going back to the factory original setting if we want to do the... so we'll try this and make sure, but I believe you just have to do the enter and write it to the system, and then that's all you need to do. Now look, this is the great thing. You don't even have to know what your set is, but you can I'm sorry, you don't have to know what adjustment right off the bat. You don't have to go in there blind once you get into this service menu, because here right on the next page it tells you what every selectable item is. And if we just look here, you're going to tell right away that we don't have a whole lot. If we get in here for our especially our settings for geometry, okay, our vertical frequency and a horizontal frequency, that's not something we're going to tend to need to mess with, unfortunately. It's not going to help us in any way. And that's not something that we want to adjust without specific tools for specific adjustment. You don't need to do that. You can skip 1 through 3. Here's the data range that it can go through. Here's what the average setting is. So if you feel like your set's messed up in something, this is like the factory reset. Okay? This is the factory reset. So without doing the factory reset, you could get in here and compare what your set has turned on, because some of these things could turn it to a different mode altogether. And I'm about to do a future video. I've been thinking about it for a while, about factory resets and how a lot of times they are messed up and you don't want to do them. That's a different video. Don't worry about it. Thank you, everybody. And I appreciate I see some people have been asking about how I've been feeling. I feel great. Thank you for joining us today. I really appreciate it. Anyway, we can see on here that our most important stuff, we're going to have vertical position. It's going to be labeled on the screen as VPOS. That's our vertical center. That's an important one that we can use to adjust vertical center. V size for vertical size. We do have a linearity and a vertical correction, which is another type of a linearity setting. But look at the ranges on here, okay? Please notice these ranges. This is not a huge range. You've got vertical center and vertical size. Those have a pretty good size range, but when you get to the vertical linearity settings, you only have 15 different settings pretty much, or 16 if you include 0. And then vertical compensation. I'm actually not quite sure what that is, but we'll see what it does. It might not, it could very well not do anything. There is an asterisk down there. Setup value. Okay, so that's the setup value is a 2 normally on this vertical compensation. Interesting. So anyway, there's a horizontal center, but there's not even a horizontal size adjustment on this set. And hey, look, if just like everybody in the chat's saying right now, this is invaluable data you can usually find in the service manual for your set. You can get in there, and about halfway through that manual, it will give you this kind of information where it tells you how to enter the service mode if there's one available. If your TV is older and doesn't have a service menu at all, then it doesn't have a service mode more than likely, and all the adjustment has to be done internally by physical means. So thankfully, we have this setting, or these settings that we can change, but as you can see, we're not going to be able to change our horizontal size. So we're always stuck with a certain horizontal size. And another thing is we're always going to be stuck with almost a vertical size if we think about that and we look at this properly, because if we look at this properly and we want to have a good linearity on our screen, or I'm sorry, not linearity, a good aspect ratio, then this red box needs to have the same length here as it does here, okay? So if we're limited and we can only have it a certain length here, this way, then to match that length, we have to match it vertically. And so we're really only limited to kind of one good setting on this CRT based on the fact that we're stuck with that horizontal size. And now look, you ever see one of these things? Everybody, this is like to measure your measurements, right? If you go into a tailor or you go into a hobby shop, you can get one of these soft measuring tapes. And the reason these are nice is because they're flexible and you're not going to scratch up your tube when you go over here and make an adjustment, or not even an adjustment, but if you just do check size on here. So let's see here, because to me, this looks like this screen is a bit off. It looks like it's not wide enough, like the height is too long. So let's take our measurement. I'm looking at about 7, at the most 7.25 there on the vertical side. And then our horizontal size, my goodness, was I wrong? Look at this. Yeah, look, horizontally, actually, we're right at almost a 7.25. So that's a lot of times why you have to be able to check this stuff as opposed to just jumping into it and supposing that you're, the eye can be deceiving. So let's go ahead now and we'll go back. We'll turn the set off. It's in. the set is in our mode where we can do the adjustment, and we can get into the adjustment mode, right? If we do this next part, we're going to do what it says here. We're going to hit display, 5, volume, and then power. So I'll switch back to the main camera, and we'll do that now on the remote. I'll hit, let me find all these buttons, display, 5, volume up, and then power. Display, 5, volume up, power. Oops, I missed the power button. So let's wait a second. Display, 5, volume up, power. All right, set's coming on. If I did it correctly, we should see that service AFC. Look at there. Perfect. Right. So again, we're in RGB mode. So you can see everything, how this mod with the way it's designed and using that mux switch where it's sending that voltage, it's great because now we're not interrupting this OSD. So we're actually able to use this OSD in RGB mode like we have now. Whereas if you did it the old fashioned way without that, you'd have to adjust it, and you'd only see that menu in normal mode. You wouldn't actually see that in the next, actually you wouldn't see that service menu at all in RGB mode. So that's one of the benefits, of course, to doing this style of RGB mod. Now we're going to use our remote control, and if I correctly remember, we're going to need to use 1 and 4 to select an item. 1 and 4, let's see. Okay, so we're on AFC. And then if we go up, well, there's our vertical positioning. Let's go back to the monoscope pattern. Vertical positioning, right? Let's see. Let this camera get a second there to catch up and everything. So vertical positioning right now, we're at 24. Our max is 31, I believe. If I looked at the chart, vertical position, the max is 31. It's vertical position, aka vertical center. Now to go up and down on this, we're going to use 3 and 6, 3 and 6, 1 and 4, 3 and 6. So there's 3. So like, yeah, if we go all the way up, there's 31. Okay. That's not a good one, but we're going to try to get that balanced right in the middle, right? So you want to make sure that everything is centered that way. And at the end of the day, you're going to deal with the imperfections you're stuck with. So there we go. That's our first one we can try. That's how it looks. You can sit here and tweak that. And then you can go to the next setting, which is vertical size, V size. And we're at 32 on this one. This one has one of the largest ranges, and that'll go up to 63. So you can really expand that size. 32 right now. I mean, look at how much you could really walk that out. Woo! Man, you could get the worst aspect ratio of your dreams on this thing. So let's not do that. Let's help Keith Rainey sleep at night and get it down here to a regular range. Now, if I look at the thing that's crazy to me, it says the average data for vertical size. The average data on here is 16. So that's what it's telling you. If you went back and did like a factory reset on this, you'd be stuck with 16. Let's look what 16 looks like on the set. I mean, that's what they're saying. It's like if you if you do 16, look how terrible that looks. So it's like an example of the factory data really just not being good sometimes. So there we have our vertical size and a long range that we can adjust on that. But it doesn't get really that exciting after that. Let's see what else we can do. We've got a vertical linearity. We're starting with an 8, which is right in the center because we can only go 0 to 15. So we're just over center. Let's go all the way up. Okay. and then down. This is extremely difficult to judge. I want you to see as I sweep through this up and down, what do you notice is changing? I mean, obviously the top and bottom are sweeping up and down on the screen. That's one thing, but what's actually changing on the screen? Well, I'll just keep doing it and you just keep looking. It's not anything really much in the center of the screen. It's these cubes up here, or these squares right in this area. Those are expanding and contracting this size area of the screen. That's what it's working with. And your goal here is again to try to make these small squares as centered, or as equal in size on each side. So you can take your, again, measuring device, and you can easily measure each axis of this square. And if it's in, you're maybe with a set like this, obviously it's going to be very difficult. I don't think you could get them all perfect, but you can get them within a general tolerance that the set is allowed, and the best that it can basically do. You're not going to, make this thing, you could recap it, do whatever you want. You're not going to make this thing look like a PVM or BVM as far as like geometry and controls. You're never going to get it to look like that because it's not able to. So you can use these settings though, and this tool guide to try to make some adjustments and get it to its best spot, and then deal with that and then enjoy it. Really, that's all you really can do on that. So this, again, we're looking at the vertical linearity on here, so I'm sorry for that little rant. But this is also a time when I like to look at one of the older patterns on this, and that is just the physical linearity pattern. Look at this real quickly. Hopefully the sizes on this will, this will look a little bit better on the screen. There we go. Give it a second to catch up. And again, what I'm looking for is trying to keep these circles to look as round as possible, including this large inner circle. It needs to look as round as possible, and these need to look round. We don't want them looking like pears or ovals, and I'll show you. You can see that a little bit better as I increase that linearity. Look at there. See, the top half of the screen looks incredibly, well, it actually looks a little squished, like a squished ball, right? Squish. And that's the top end of that. And then the bottom end's reversed. You're squishing down here, squish. And then up here you've got, an oblong shape. And funny enough, how that ends up being the best setting you are stuck with is an 8 or something right in the middle. Because again, there's just not a lot of flexibility on this particular model. Now we'll go on and go back to, but that's just another thing you can use. You can also measure the distance inside the here. If you press that, it brings up this crazy grid pattern over top of it. And that's just one of those patterns I still like to use. I think it's kind of been dropped off some versions to make space for the monoscope and other test patterns. Sorry about that. Went back too far. So there we are back at the monoscope pattern, and we will go through the next setting, which is our vertical correction, and it's called VSC. So let's see what we've got there. VSC 0, VSCO. Okay. VSCO. Let's see what this one does. We're starting at a 4. This one again is only from 0 to 15. At least it says in the manual. Let's see. So again, it's almost the same effect, right? You see that? Not quite the same, but the goal there is to help you balance out. Now, this one actually does seem to have better controls over the center. See how that's actually expanding more in the center? It's not just the outside. So that one you might be able to use a little bit better on this set. I'm not completely convinced. The unfortunate thing you'll notice, and that is going to be the heartbreaker for all this. I don't remember what my original setting was, but I can come back and figure that out later. But anyway, the problem that we are hit with now is that's it. We only get with this set 4, 5, 6, 7. We only get 6 total geometry settings in this service menu. That's one of the least you're going to find out there. And that's one of the huge downsides to this particular set. Kind of talked about it this whole stream. This one, you can see only 6 adjustments. The rest of the adjustments, if we go up from there, look at it. You're starting to get into color now. So you could go in here and use some color grading equipment and color grade this CRT and make it look better as far as colors are concerned, because you've got then green amp, you've got blue amp, you've got green cutoff, blue cutoff, chroma trap, sub contrast, so sub hue, all sub brightness. So if your set does need some more brightness increasing or anything like that, then yes, you can get in here and adjust all that. But that's really all you're going to want to do. You don't really probably want to mess with any of this other stuff, except for possibly sub contrast number 15 and sub brightness number 18. Those 2 settings could be useful if you need to do a brightness gauge. And I can show you a real quick way to look at that. If we go out to another menu, and you can look at some of these like color bars here, and you're trying to, oh, that's going to look bad on the screen. I don't think, maybe it'll finally catch it. No, the colors, no, those color bars are too much color on the screen. But you can try to use a sharpness pattern. You can try to use a sharpness pattern and just, there's other patterns, and I've done other things before. I don't want to really screw everybody up, but you can go in and adjust your sub contrast, your sub brightness to levels using other tools in this test suite. So I can't show you that on screen with the current settings on the live stream. So unfortunately, we won't really do that. But the last thing we will do is we will get out of this. We'll get back out of this, and we'll go, and we're going to save our settings, because I want to make sure. I don't know if that was going to screw up this time. You can still see some lines, but anyway, we'll do this. We'll make sure we save our settings. So we're going to do the procedure to save the settings. It says, once you're done, press muting and the enter to write into memory. Muting is at the top. Muting, right into memory. Muting, and then when it says enter, you press enter, and that should be it. Muting, enter, right? It goes red and then it goes away again. That means it's now in the memory, okay? So that's all you need to do. Now we can power it off and power it back on, and it will go into regular mode, and all our settings that we just changed are made. And that is literally how you would go through and calibrate this one. Unfortunately, like I said, you're only going to get those few adjustments there. The worst is no pin amp controls. So again, you cannot fix like pin amp problems if you end up with one. It's got just a standard setting in there somewhere that uses, I don't know, it might still use the capacitors. So if you have a pin amp problem, your best option on this particular set would be to attack it with capacitors. So, well, that, folks, is a complete rundown on kind of what I had ready for this particular set. What I can do is show you maybe something that would look a little bit cooler on the screen. Maybe we'll let it find a good, I want to find a good thing that'll run, a good background, but I don't also want it to be too much. It's got to be something that doesn't have a lot of bright flashing white in it. So that's, we'll let this load up and see if it looks any better. We might push the CRT back a little bit, give it a little bit more space to try to focus on. I'm not really sure that will help any. This is all new. I've got new cameras and everything I'm trying here, and so hopefully it will it'll look pretty good. But as long as you're not too concerned with how that edge looks, can make your set look good, really good, by RGB modding it. I mean, you're not gonna perfect everything that's wrong on this screen, but you will get a great image out of that after that modification is done. So have an idea of what that hopefully gives you a little bit of a more helpful idea as to what this set does, like what it looks like at the end. I know CRTs are probably they're difficult to try to, not modify, but film. So you're not going to be able to see obviously the greatness that this displays in person, but it does have very sharp image now, and it just looks really, really good. And it's going to be the best way to get the best image out of this particular set. The other thing you could do that I recommend with this kind of a set is, even before you do what I did on this modification, it's never going to hurt to go in and recap it, but maybe you're not ready for that, because that's a lot of work, can be very difficult because you're removing components then, whereas the modification you saw today, you're not really doing, I don't think you have to have the same level of equipment that you would need. You just need a soldering iron, as opposed to like recapping it. You need probably a desoldering tool. I wouldn't want to try it with that one. But that's a CRT, folks, and that's the modification. It's a full walkthrough on it. I can't think of anything else that you might want from my notes, but I'm open now if anybody has any questions over this, or wants to talk about anything that I went through. If you were here through the stream, I'll be open to answer any questions you may have. I think it's an amazing CRT. It's very light. It's easy to travel with. It's cool to show off to people because, again, it looks super sharp. It's like an arcade monitor at this point. And it's really a great thing to do with one of these old CRTs that otherwise, I don't know if you give it a lot of love or attention. It's pretty much the most base model that most basic model that Sony ever made. Thanks a bunch, guys. I really appreciate you all staying here with me today. Again, I'll hang out for a little bit longer. What we can do is just, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them. Otherwise, I'll just chat for a little bit longer, because I want, if you came into the stream now, this will all be re-uploaded on the channel soon, and so will the live chat. I've noticed it takes about a day for that to come back up, so be patient there. If you're looking for the live chat, it will show back up about a day later after the stream is done. But I do not normally, thank you, Belmont, I do not normally offer this as a service in my shop. And the only reason I want to tell you that is because this is very, it can be a pain in the neck. Like you don't realize how finicky these things can be on the consumer level. I feel like this is an amazing project for people to aspire to. But as of like right now, it's not something that I normally offer and sell, or I might help somebody out occasionally, but it's not something where I'm like, my goal is to RGB modify a lot of sets. Hopefully in the future I'll be in the position where maybe I could do that for people more often, but just as it sits right now, my time has to be spent doing other things, and I've got too many other things going on where there's still a lot of PVM and higher end CRTs that just need to be serviced normally. So that takes up a lot of my time. All right, let's get to some good questions. Steve, have you had to replace any flybacks for the D series? Oh man, no, I have not. And are you sure your flyback's gone? That's the only thing. The problem with that D series, and I tell it to a lot of people, you've got boards, a half a dozen boards in there that you have to service and make sure they're going well and working well. And then you've got the tube. You've got to make sure the tube's got still some life left on it. And so then you have the flyback, right? How do you know exactly? It's really hard to tell when a flyback's gone out unless it's exploded, like the one I've seen on the arcade. And you can look up some good videos. I've never really had the thing happen like this, but there are video effects that will show on the screen if the flyback's dying. And it's more like a weird thing where it's not putting enough energy out consistently, so it just keeps going and like going down in power, and the screen would like lose power and pulsate slowly. That can be an issue with the flyback. So if you do have one, though, it shouldn't really be that difficult of a job for the manual part of it, but I would definitely recommend getting into the D series, whichever one it is, the actual D series. I would get into the D series service manual like we did today and make sure that there's not a process that you need to go through, because surely there is for the flyback, just to make sure it's not, you don't want to send the flyback in there and have it pumping way too much voltage in just because it's sent to you that way. So that's something I would be mindful of. Someone else has a KV mag. Excuse me. Whew, sorry, guys. Magnetar 83. Hello there. I have a Sony KV 14T1D. It has a horizontal line that can only be seen with a certain color backgrounds on the game through RGB. Do you know what that could be? You're most likely looking at some kind of a component failure there. It's either something, if it's color related, you might want to check the neck board out, see if make sure the solder is nice and good on there, and maybe recap the neck board and the deflection area of your CRT. And generally speaking, that's the best you can do to clear up 75% of the problems you may have with your BVM. I'm sorry, your CRT in general. Generally, they can be taken care of with a cap kit to the neck board, and then the deflection area and the power area. Someone else, Retired Night Owl, recently picked up a KV9. There's a different guide. That's another thing. You always have to, like I said earlier, you always have to check online and see if there's an actual great guide for your specific CRT, what's available, who's done it before. If you don't find anything on a CRT that you're looking at and you're not pretty technically minded, I would skip it. I would go and try to find one like this where there's a lot of good guides already on there, something on where there's already a guide like there is to this one on the CRT database. There's probably 50 other CRTs on there, and maybe another 40 online documented other places that have had this kind of modification done to them. So I would kind of recommend going down that route of trying to find one that is already good documented. But that might be one of them. Ray Fu Random. You got a KV HS420. Worked for 2 days, and the picture turned into purple squares and tiny little colorful pixels. It just depends. If it's worth to repair, it's going to be a pain. The more complex the monitor, the more difficult the repair is. And that could be a tube issue if you're losing color like that, or very possibly a neck board again, or even the input board where the color that maybe a color. Usually you try to figure out what color is going out, and then you're like, okay, if I'm missing green, if this is something I'm going to go through more with the waveform generator and the waveform monitor videos that I'm going to be doing when I get that equipment unboxed, which I will be doing tomorrow night at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with my buddy 8-Bit Esquire. So make sure you're going to be tuned in for that if you want to get an early look at that. But that will show you a bit on the color side. Because if you see like magenta, that means a certain color's missing, and cyan means another color's missing on your screen. If you look more, that means like you're missing, yellow, red. So there's a lot of cool little tricks to color with that waveform generator and monitor that I think everybody's going to enjoy. But then again, is it something that you really love? Could you find another one in the meantime? I don't know. If it's something that you really want to try to work on, there's no problem with trying to learn on it. Sleek Goose had asked if there are any ways to prolong a CRT and just how to take care of it in general. And there's always, you can take care of your CRT just like anything. Hey, James Boone, welcome to the show. If you keep it in an area, you try to keep the dust out of it, just like any electronic device. You don't want to really try to get dust in there or pet hair, so don't let your cats hang out on top of it or something. Don't leave an animal cage on top of it. I don't know. Some people do some weird stuff with CRTs occasionally, but I would just keep it clear. There's vent holes on them. Try to keep that clear. It's always good, even if you're not capable of doing like repairs and servicing. It's always going to be beneficial if you can open up the CRT shell and make sure there's not a lot of dust. Try to clean it up a little bit in there safely. Put it back together. And once it's clean, that's really the biggest part about it, is keeping it clean and keeping the temperature down in it. Keep it in a low humidity environment. There are other recommendations for it, but the main part is that I'd always use it with a surge protector. There are some other general tips that you want to avoid. Like, you don't want to mess with, I had another Patreon member who was using a PVM, and he was trying to use arcade hardware with it. And I would always recommend using some type of stable super gun, because I've seen a lot of PVMs get the sync line destroyed by voltage shooting out of a arcade board. So that's just some general tips, though. James, are PVMs less bright than consumer sets? Relatively dim compared? They should be. It's by default, I don't know. I mean, generally speaking, I feel like default settings on consumer CRTs, they tend to be higher than what I like on PVMs or even any CRT. I generally have to go in and tune down the contrast and brightness on most sets. So I do feel like the consumer level, since it's something that you normally had to get in, they wanted to have that picture nice and bright. So it more or less probably was a little bit brighter, because you didn't want to you didn't want to have to argue with a customer on saying a screen was not bright enough. Most of these consumer sets would have been in an environment where a lot of backlight was being used, and so a brighter screen would make sense. Oh yeah. Once you get into some of them, when you start getting into cleaning, that is, sometimes you'll open a set. The worst can be if it was a smoker. Those can almost be impossible to get everything out of it as far as the smell is going. Okay, Meat Bun asked a good question. Where can you get this guide or this information? So you can go back and try to find some videos that I've done about CRT calibration as like a general speaking kind of thing, or watching me calibrate other CRTs that are like today, where you would just walk through what we did on this calibration. But as far as like the documentation, let's see, what were we asking here? Guides. Yeah, test pattern. The test patterns are a free gift from Artemio and the 240p Test Suite team and the developers over there, where all you have to do is Google 240p Test Suite, and it'll take you straight to the Junker HQ website. And I mean, this is the best program we're going to get for the price. It's free. You got to go check it out. I love the work that anybody puts in. It's a community-based thing. There's a lot of people who work really hard, just like on Mister and things. There's a lot of people who work hard on getting these test patterns ported over to other systems. I mean, it's on the 32X Genesis now. Basically, there's for each kind of console that are the major consoles, there's a test suite for it, and it's really one of the few things that Artemio works on that's just awesome. He's a ton of tools over at the website. Not just that, a lot of other things that are very cool on there. So I'd recommend going to Junker HQ, Google or internet search 240p Test Suite and check it out. I link it in a lot of my calibration videos. Anytime I use it, I try to link it on there. Yeah, there's not really community-wide work as far as I'm aware of, to get. The question was what about for plastics? If you have a broken plastic, the best thing right now is if you can piece together the plastic, and I've done that a few times. You do that a few times. Sorry, I'm reading some other things on here. Anyway, yeah, sorry, I lost my train of thought because I started to read broken plastics. Yeah, I was starting to read another question there. So broken plastics, you can use different ABS, different cements, and you try to piece that together and almost bondo it in a way, and then you can even paint the shell if you're really dedicated. But the best way, it seems, is to shape that plastic with some Bondo material after you piece and glue that back together. A lot of times adding little Lego pieces on the back sides helps and reinforce that. I've used procedures that involve actual epoxy, and then others that involve super glue and baking soda, and even like other plastic specific adhesives. You can look those up online. There's tons of different things to use there. But as far as, there's a few things, like a few bezels for PVMs that are more likely to become something. 720 test speed, 720p for your HD Wega. That'll be fun. Which consoles do I recommend? My favorite console to use is going to be the Super Nintendo. The problem is, largely speaking, each one of these CRTs has, each one of these consoles has some kind of a drawback where possibly some of the signal isn't coming in. Like, it might say it's doing something, but it's an analog video signal. There could be something a little bit incorrect in it, so you're adjusting to something that is incorrect. But I usually find that comparing between the Sega Genesis one and the Super Nintendo one, those are the two I use generally to adjust sets, and then I compare them with each other, and that's kind of what I use, is those two. Those two are my favorite, and they're the ones I'm most comfortable with. Now, I understand that like there's better ones now. The Wii one is an exceptional version of one. I'm waiting for the Dreamcast one to come out on a physical media that I've ordered from a company. They're supposed to be sending it soon. I don't know. It was a pre-order I did a few months ago, like 6 months ago. So I'm waiting for that one, but I want to try that. So if you're using a Wii in your CRT right now, set up, and you can get the ROM over onto that might be the best one, is the Wii. Otherwise, Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis are good, but any of them are really good. No problem. All right, guys, so it's 1:43, and we've been going for about an hour and 40 minutes on the stream. I really appreciate everybody who came in today. Thank you for the super chats and any of the questions. I will see everybody tomorrow night on the next stream. Otherwise, if you're coming in now and you're catching the end of the stream, feel free to either go back and scroll back all the way to the beginning or wait a couple minutes for it to automatically re-upload to the channel. And hey, everybody, thanks again. Have a great rest of your day, and I will see you with a friend here tomorrow night at 9.